Captain Maya Ramos wasn't built for dress uniforms and polite smiles. She was built for steel, speed, and the kind of low-altitude chaos that saved lives on the ground. She was, quite simply, the best close air support pilot in the 47th Fighter Wing, and her A-10C Warthog, which she affectionately called Phoenix, was an extension of her own stubborn will. The setting was Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, a small, sprawling fortress near Goldsboro, North Carolina. It was a place where old traditions and new technology constantly butted heads. Maya, with her sharp focus and refusal to play political games, often found herself on the wrong side of that clash. The main source of friction was General Marcus Thorne, the wing commander. Thorne was a relic of an older air war, a man who saw the A-10 as crude and its pilots as overly aggressive cowboys. He saw Maya, a young woman who had shattered every training record, as a dangerous liability, a threat to his carefully managed, clean-cut career. "Captain Ramos," Thorne said one Tuesday morning, his voice dry and flat as he looked over her proposed training flight path. "Your maneuvers are excessive. We are looking for precision, not spectacle. I've heard the ground crews call you Viper. I suggest you remember that a viper is often mistaken for a snake, and snakes are typically dealt with summarily." Maya simply held his gaze, her spine perfectly straight. "Sir, the maneuver at that angle and altitude allows a quicker turnaround for a gun run on a moving target while maintaining minimum exposure time. It's what saves soldiers, General, not spectacle," Thorne scoffed. "Your focus is reckless. The mission tomorrow, Captain, is non-negotiable. A simple, high-altitude surveillance sweep over the perimeter of Sector 3. Stick to the flight plan." "No heroics, Viper. I need that data, not a casualty report." Maya knew the mission was a lie. Sector 3 was the most unstable, unpredictable sector of their deployment zone. A simple sweep meant they needed the Warthog's heavy punch ready, but Thorne was deliberately handicapping her. He wanted her to fail quietly, to prove his assessment of her was correct. That evening, Maya was in the hangar with her crew chief, Sergeant Miller, running diagnostics on Phoenix. Miller was a grizzled, kind man, her only true ally in the command structure. "He trying to ground you again, Captain?" Miller asked, not looking up from a wiring harness. "He's trying to tie my hands, Miller. Wants me to fly high and gentle over a nest of hornets. I can't do that. Not with Bravo companies stuck down there waiting for their extraction window." Miller finally looked up, his eyes crinkling. "Then you won't. Just bring the big bird home, ma'am. That's all any of us care about." Maya ran a hand over the rough-patched aluminum of Phoenix's left wing. The plane wasn't graceful, but it was tough. It was a machine built for war and endurance, and tomorrow it would need every ounce of both. She climbed into the cockpit one last time that night, checking the 30mm Avenger Gatling gun, the legendary GAU-8, making sure the round counter was zeroed and ready. She knew what Thorne expected. She knew what the troops on the ground needed. And Maya Ramos always honored the need. The weight of the base's disapproval, Thorne's constant mocking dismissal, and the fear for the ground troops settled over her. They could call her reckless. They could call her a snake. Tomorrow she would prove she was a viper, striking swiftly and accurately, regardless of the consequences for herself. The sunrise over the deployment zone was less a sunrise and more a metallic, hazy glare through the cockpit canopy. Maya and Phoenix were airborne, operating outside the official combat theater, but providing security coverage for the neighboring unstable region. It was a technicality Thorne used to keep official scrutiny low, but the reality was pure danger. The mission was ostensibly the high-altitude sweep General Thorne had ordered. But within 10 minutes, Maya received a coded, frantic transmission, not from the command center, but from the actual ground team commander, Major Diaz of Bravo Company. "Viper, we have a problem. The extraction window is compromised. We're pinned down in the valley receiving heavy machine gun fire. We can't get the vehicles out. We need immediate low-altitude cover. Command says to hold position, but if we hold, we die." Maya glanced at her fuel levels and her official flight plan, which had her circling at 15,000 feet, too high to offer meaningful protection. Thorne's voice echoed in her mind. "No heroics. Stick to the flight plan. She keyed the mic, her voice calm despite the rising tension. Diaz, this is Viper. Your request is acknowledged. I am establishing a new flight profile. Get those vehicles moving. I'm bringing the rain. She pushed the twin turbofan engines to their limit, screaming Phoenix down into the valley floor. The change in altitude was instant and brutal. The air grew thicker, and the sound of the Gatling gun warming up was a comforting, mechanical growl. As she dropped below the ridgeline, the environment erupted. Tracer rounds sliced past her cockpit canopy like angry red wasps. This was no perimeter skirmish. This was a well-organized ambush, and Bravo Company was caught in the kill zone. Maya's mind went into the deep, focused tunnel vision that only true combat pilots know. She saw the position of the hostile fire, 3 machine gun nests embedded in the ruins of a small factory complex. She didn't hesitate. She rolled Phoenix onto her side, giving the massive GAU-8 gun the perfect line of fire. The legendary sound of the Warthog's main weapon was not just noise, it was the sound of concentrated violence and salvation. The cannon, firing depleted uranium rounds at 3,900 rounds per minute, tore the factory complex apart. The first nest disintegrated into dust and debris. Maya pulled up sharply, the G-forces pressing her into her seat, then banked hard for the second target. She provided 2 more flawless gun runs, the fire decreasing with each pass. Diaz radioed back, relief thick in his voice. Viper, we're moving. Vehicles are clear! You just saved 60 lives, Captain. Thank you, thank you! Maya saw the last vehicle clear the valley mouth. Her primary objective was complete. She had saved Bravo Company. She was about to climb back to safety when the ground below her flared with a brilliant, blinding light. It was a heavy surface-to-air missile, an unexpected, advanced threat that should never have been there. Thorne's intelligence report had been critically wrong, or worse, deliberately minimized the threat. Maya had a fraction of a second to react. She dumped chaff and flares, the standard defensive procedure, but the missile was too fast and too close. It clipped Phoenix's left engine nacelle. The impact was deafening. Mayday! Mayday! This is Viper! I'm hit! Engine 1 is gone! Severe control systems damage. I'm going down! Repeat, I'm going down! The cockpit warning lights flashed wildly, a blinding, chaotic carnival of red and yellow. The control stick went heavy and sluggish. She fought the crippled aircraft, trying to nurse it toward friendly territory, but the second engine began to sputter, flames licking the trailing edge of the wing. Her mayday call was abruptly cut off by a surge of static, the main comm system fried by the blast. Phoenix was dying, and Maya Ramos was going down with her. The landing was less a controlled descent and more a violent argument with gravity. Maya fought the controls until the last possible second, coaxing Phoenix to glide over the only open, flat stretch of ground she could see, a disused, overgrown military strip deep in the forbidden sector, miles away from the official deployment area. The final contact with the Earth was a sickening crunch and scrape. The landing gear on the left side failed, tearing the wing flap. Phoenix skidded violently, the remaining engine spitting fire and smoke before finally grinding to a halt in a cloud of dust and shredded weeds. Silence descended, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal and the roar of her own labored breath. Maya was stunned, but alive. Her head pounded, and a deep, agonizing pain shot through her left leg, but her training took over. Get out. Secure the aircraft. Wait for rescue. She unstrapped herself from the ejection seat, ignoring the pain, and fought her way out of the mangled canopy. The sight of Phoenix was devastating. The aircraft was heavily damaged, its signature nose cannon slightly askew, one engine a twisted, blackened ruin. But the tough, titanium bathtub surrounding the cockpit, the protection that made the A-10 a legend, had saved her life. Maya dragged herself a safe distance away and established a defensive perimeter. She had her sidearm, survival kit, and a satellite radio, but the main antenna was likely destroyed and the battery life on the backup was critically low. She tried the satellite radio. Static. She tried again. A brief flash of connectivity, then silence. She knew that without a clear signal, The base would only have her last, incomplete Mayday. Back at Seymour Johnson, the brief, chaotic transmission was received in the command center. General Thorne was instantly summoned. "The A-10 is down, General. Captain Ramos called a Mayday. Impact location is unknown. Signal lost in Sector 3. Thorne's face, usually so composed and stern, showed a flash of something ugly. Relief. The pilot he considered a rogue element was gone. His problem was solved. "Did she violate her flight profile?" Thorne asked, his voice low and clinical. We don't have her full data log, sir. But the initial sweep was high altitude. If she was shot down, she must have been flying low," the comms officer stammered. "Of course she was flying low," Thorne said, slamming his hand down on the desk, creating a fabricated air of frustration. "That woman was a liability, reckless to the core. She ignored a direct order for a simple sweep. She went hunting, and she paid the price." He made a swift, cold decision. He knew the location where Bravo Company had been saved. He knew Maya had likely gone low to help them. But admitting that would mean admitting his intelligence was faulty and his initial plan was wrong. Worse, it would make Maya a hero. Thorne could not allow that. "Mark the pilot MIA with a high probability of KIA," Thorne commanded. "Launch a minimal brief SR mission for optics, but pull the team after 6 hours. The risk is too high. Send a message to the ground forces that her actions were unauthorized. Tell the press team that Captain Ramos went missing during a volatile, unauthorized diversion. They'll never see her again. She's gone." And just like that, Maya Ramos, the pilot who had risked everything and saved 60 men, was erased from the narrative by the commander who resented her skill. Her heroic sacrifice was recast as reckless failure. She was alone, crippled, and officially abandoned, all within the span of a single hour. General Thorne moved with the cold efficiency of a man covering a vital mistake. He held a press briefing. The next morning, standing tall and somber before a wall draped with the wing's crest. He looked every bit the grieving professional commander, but his words were tailored to destroy Maya's reputation and protect his own. "It is with deep regret that I announce Captain Maya Ramos, call sign Viper, is missing and presumed lost," Thorne stated, his voice steady. "Captain Ramos, a skilled pilot, unfortunately, chose to deviate significantly from her assigned high-altitude surveillance route and engaged in an unauthorized low-altitude maneuver deep within a known hostile sector." He paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. While her intentions, we assume, were to engage, her actions placed the aircraft and herself in unnecessary danger. We must always prioritize discipline and the safety of our most valuable assets. Captain Ramos's failure to adhere to the A flight plan led to her aircraft being brought down by an unexpected advanced surface-to-air threat, a loss that was entirely preventable. Thorne painted a picture of a loose cannon, a hothead whose ego outstripped her judgment. He omitted the part where she saved Bravo Company. He omitted the part where his intelligence was catastrophically wrong about the threat level. He ordered the recovery effort to stop, declaring the zone too dangerous and Phoenix too far gone. The message was clear. Maya was not a hero. She was a cautionary tale. The official story spread quickly: reckless pilot, preventable loss. The quiet, powerful grief that should have accompanied her loss was replaced by a sense of uncomfortable finality and judgment. Maya Ramos was dead, and her commander had ensured her legacy would be one of insubordination. Meanwhile, miles away in the brush, Maya was fighting a different war. Her SAT radio battery was dead. Her leg was splinted with aluminum from the survival kit. She was low on water. But as the days turned into a week, a single, driving obsession took hold of her. It wasn't about survival. It was about the truth. She crawled back into the mangled cockpit of Phoenix. The plane was a mess, but the A-10 was famously tough. Its redundancies were legendary. Most critically, the primary flight data recorder, FDR, the black box, was destroyed in the engine blast. But Maya knew about the little-known backup tactical recorder buried deep in the lower fuselage, a relic from an older model that Thorne's maintenance protocols often overlooked or simply didn't bother to maintain. If she could get that recorder, she had proof. Proof of Diaz's distress call, proof of the unauthorized low-altitude rescue, and proof that the heavy missile was a threat Thorne had failed to warn her about. But the recorder was useless if she died here. And then, she looked at the wreckage of Phoenix again. The landing gear was gone, the wings mangled, the engines destroyed. Yet, the massive hydraulic lines that powered the control surfaces and, most importantly, the ability to taxi the aircraft, those were surprisingly intact. A plan began to form, a mad, desperate, impossible plan that only a pilot as stubborn as Maya could conceive. She couldn't fly, but maybe, just maybe, she could drive the A-10 home. The journey was a living nightmare, a testament to pure, agonizing will. Over the next 3 weeks, Captain Maya Ramos nursed her crippled A-10 Phoenix across 70 miles of unforgiving scrubland, broken roads, and enemy-held territory. Her injury limited her movement, but the vast reinforced structure of the Warthog's frame became her fortress and her prison. She had salvaged enough tools to perform battlefield repairs that defied logic. She bypassed the hydraulic leaks, jury-rigged the nose-wheel steering, and cannibalized the internal lighting system for power to run the bare minimum of control systems. Just enough to steer the plane like a massive, clumsy car. The A-10 was designed to be repaired in the field, a trait Maya now exploited to its absolute extreme. She couldn't use the engines. The good one was too damaged to risk starting, and the bad one was a wreck. Her propulsion came from something even more unlikely, the GIU-8 gun. She found a way to use the engine start mechanism, designed to spool up the gun for firing, to create small, controlled bursts of forward momentum. Maya would secure the area. Then climb back into the cockpit, arm the main cannon, and fire a single, short burst toward the rear, safely away from her position. The recoil, that massive, controlled force that nearly stops the plane mid-air, provided a brutal, shuddering push forward of maybe 50 feet. Then she'd stop, reload the firing mechanism, using a few remaining rounds only for the propellant force, and repeat the process. Boom, 50 feet. Boom, 50 feet. It took her hours to cover a single mile. She ate her meager rations, catching rainwater and avoiding enemy patrols, who would occasionally spot the massive hulk of the A-10 but assume it was a destroyed wreck, not a mobile, moving war machine. She hid Phoenix in thickets of trees and under camouflage netting she had salvaged, moving only at night under the cover of the moon. Her physical pain was a constant. Dull roar, but her emotional pain was sharper. Every grinding, painful foot of movement was a rebuttal to General Thorne's casual dismissal. Every inch closer to the border was a step toward justice. She wasn't just bringing herself home. She was bringing the truth. The backup tactical recorder, which she had managed to carefully extract and tuck into her flight boot, contained the irrefutable data, the timestamp of Major Diaz's distress call, her immediate response, and the exact coordinates of the unexpected missile launch. Finally, after 22 days of isolation, pain, and relentless grinding movement, Maya reached the agreed-upon safe withdrawal border. She was a ghost, skeletal injured but consumed by a ferocious, unyielding purpose. The final few miles were across an open, cleared area, the most dangerous part of the entire crawl. She knew she had to make one final dramatic effort. She had to show them. She secured the tactical recorder to her person and prepared Phoenix for one final insane act. It was a quiet, typical Tuesday evening back at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. General Thorne was finishing his paperwork, a self-satisfied calm settling over him. Captain Ramos was officially a closed file, a regrettable but professionally handled incident. The silence was shattered by the tower chief's voice over the base-wide intercom. Laced with panic, unidentified slow-moving target on radar. Altitude 50 feet, bearing 27 Nero, inside the exclusion zone. Looks like a major equipment failure. Initiate code black. Code black! The radar image was baffling. Something huge, slow, and registering as an A-10 was approaching the runway at an altitude usually reserved for birds. But it was moving toward the base with undeniable purpose. Thorne rushed to the tower, irritation quickly turning to horrified recognition. He looked through the high-powered binoculars the controller handed him. The sight was impossible. Crawling toward the main runway was Phoenix, not flying but dragging itself along the ground, powered by sheer mechanical abuse and fury. One wing was crumpled, the tail fins were battered, and one engine nacelle was a smoke-belching, blackened ruin. But the canopy was shut, and the landing lights, powered by her jury-rigged systems, were flashing, signaling the intent to land. "That's impossible," Thorne whispered, his face draining of color. "I signed the salvage papers myself." "That aircraft was destroyed!" He watched, transfixed, as the hulk of the A-10 hit the main runway approach, sparks flying from the fuselage where the landing gear used to be. The ground crews, who had been ordered to evacuate, stood mesmerized, watching the ghost of a plane come home. Inside the cockpit, Maya was fighting the last, hardest battle. Her vision was tunneling, the pain in her legs screaming, but she had to complete the act. She used the last remaining hydraulic pressure to slightly adjust the rudders, keeping the dying war machine perfectly aligned. The sound of metal shrieking on concrete was excruciating. Finally, with a last violent shudder, Phoenix slid to a stop directly in the center of the runway, just past the tower. The canopy popped open, and a figure covered head to toe in soot, grease, and dust, slowly, painfully, began to climb out. It was Maya. She dropped to the tarmac. Unable to stand, but she didn't crawl away. She looked directly at the crowd of stunned faces, the lights of the base, and the figure of General Thorne rushing out of the tower doors. Maya slowly raised her hand, not in a wave, but in a gesture of defiance, and then she passed out, the last ounce of her formidable will finally exhausted. The aftermath was a scene of controlled chaos. Maya was rushed to the base hospital. Phoenix, the crippled warrior, was towed away and surrounded by investigators. General Thorne stood speechless on the tarmac, his professional world having just crashed and burned in spectacular fashion. The commander immediately tried to spin the story again. "It's a miracle," he told the first officers. "Captain Ramos, in her delirium, must have found a derelict vehicle and drove it back. We need to confirm her identity and mental state before issuing any statement." He was trying to minimize the miracle, to make it seem like a fluke of survival, not a feat of legendary airmanship and engineering, but he was too late. Sergeant Miller, the crew chief, had been one of the first to reach the downed pilot. As Maya was loaded onto the stretcher, she had weakly grabbed his arm and managed 3 whispered words, pointing to her boot. "The black box." Miller immediately understood. He retrieved the tactical recorder, which contained not just flight data, but the crucial audio and video logs Thorne had claimed were destroyed. He bypassed Thorne's security and handed the recorder directly to the chief of staff, a by-the-book officer who answered only to Washington. The truth exploded from the data. Authorization. The recording clearly showed Major Diaz's frantic distress call, requesting a life-saving low-altitude intervention. Rescue. It verified Maya's immediate, decisive, and successful action, confirming she saved 60 men. Threat knowledge. Most damningly, the pre-flight logs contained a minor systems warning flag filed a week earlier that had been deliberately dismissed by General Thorne's office, a flag warning of advanced surface-to-air missile activity in Sector 3. Thorne had known the danger was higher than he admitted. Yet he had specifically ordered Maya to fly unarmed, without a full self-protection suite, and then immediately closed her file the moment she went down. Within 48 hours, the powerful twist was complete. General Thorne's attempt to cover his mistakes by destroying the reputation of a brave soldier had failed, and the proof had literally crawled home in flames. The next press briefing was not held by General Thorne. It was held by the base commander, flanked by Major Diaz, the ground commander. "Captain Maya Ramos did not fail to follow orders," the commander announced, his voice ringing with pride. She followed the higher order of saving lives, flying a mission General Thorne had deemed too dangerous to support. The record shows that she was shot down by a threat General Thorne's office failed to disclose. And furthermore, the commander concluded, she accomplished a feat of survival and engineering that is now being taught in the academy. She did not just survive, she brought home the proof. Maya, recovering in the hospital, listened to the broadcast. The mocking nickname Viper was now used with profound respect. The general who said they'd never see her again was escorted from the base, facing court-martial and the destruction of his own career. Maya Ramos had not sought revenge, but she had achieved a deeper form of justice. She had earned the undeniable permanent respect of the entire military community, not through a medal but through a battered, scorched A-10 named Phoenix, which had risen from the ashes and dragged the truth home on a wing and a prayer.